Most of us have games that have been sitting in our backlog for far too long. One such game for me is Lollipop Chainsaw. After years and years of sitting on the shelf unplayed, I finally got around to it, and
I should have been team captain.
well, it wasn't exactly worth the wait, but it wasn't really terrible either. At least, it wasn't terrible in a way that it wasn't supposed to be. Developed by Grasshopper's own Suda51, Lollipop Chainsaw is an experiment in absurdity. Seeking to emulate the appeal of exploitive, garbage B-movie horrors, Lollipop Chainsaw is a mostly B-movie kind of experience that's strangely loaded with a star-studded cast. From the voice work of Tara Strong to the creative consultation of James Gunn, this game has talent all over it. But that talent was intentionally used to create something that seems like it was developed with a lack of talent, and I would say that they succeeded at that. If you tend to find B-movies are more or less just garbage that isn't worth your time, this game's probably not gonna be for you. But for the few of us that actually revel in that side of the movie industry, those of us who appreciate the absurdity for what it is, and often just get a kick out of how bad and stupid it all can be, there is quite a bit to enjoy here in Lollipop Chainsaw. So I decided to play this game on the Xbox 360. It's been so long since I've played it, I almost forgot what it was. So, with that, let's jump into the story, or what little bit of this story there is. We play as Juliet Starling, a blonde cheerleading bimbo from San Romero High School. San Romero, of course, being a reference to horror industry icon George A. Romero, who more or less created the zombie genre of movies in 1968 with Night of the Living Dead. This is the first of many references to be found throughout the game, references that serve as one of the title's more positive notes. Juliet seems like your average all-American bimbo, but she comes from a family with a lot of secrets, not the least of which was their history of martial arts mastery. A mastery that comes in great handy when she arrives at school that day to find out that a Marilyn Manson wannabe has triggered the zombie apocalypse. Marilyn Manson is your stereotypical social outcast, who after being rejected for so long turned towards dark solutions for his problems. He summons a series of undead demons to Earth, like Shoggoth here in his black metal boat in the sky, in hopes of more or less just destroying everything. It becomes your job to hunt down the demons and put a stop to the whole thing. And that's really it. The story isn't meant to be this game's strong suit. Honestly, the game's strength is more in its total absence of having a strong suit, or rather in its ability to do everything poorly. But that doesn't make much sense, so we're just gonna pretend I didn't say that. So the story in Lollipop Chainsaw is intentionally lackluster. It's really just here to give you a reason to go through what this game has to offer. In terms of its gameplay, Lollipop Chainsaw is an exploitation-driven hack-and-slash action game above all else. The hack-and-slash combat is incredibly janky at first, where animations often feel slow to trigger and combat is a bit stiff and unresponsive, with combos feeling like they end prematurely or simply don't flow well together. This is how it starts anyway. As you play through the game, you earn two types of currency. Gold zombie medals allow you to purchase stat upgrades and new moves, which greatly helps smooth out combat, though it never does feel truly fluid. And the silver coins allow you to buy cosmetic upgrades, new songs, and concept art. The concept art isn't really a very good return on investment though, so I mostly just bought the new costumes. The basic controls in Lollipop Chainsaw are serviceable, where the face buttons control most of your attacks, whether they be your chainsaw or pom-poms. The left and right trigger are used to fire your chain gun. L3 is used to use your Nick tickets, which allow our not quite nearly headless Nick to launch a special attack, and B is mapped to a jump button, which also works as our dodge. But any form of a decent block is sadly missing from this game, and although we get a rush attack, a decent run speed is also missing. When this meter here is charged, you can enter a special mode that one-hit kills most enemies. And if you ever questioned where James Gunn's creative decisions show in this game, well, it's definitely there in moments like this. Strategy is hardly necessary in combat, but it is built for you to be able to use it. Some attacks swing high and some swing low, both capable of cutting off different limbs that can help you get through different situations. Some zombies too will need to be stunned with a few pom-pom attacks before the chainsaw can actually be properly effective. If you get enough kills with a single chainsaw strike, you're rewarded bonus gold and silver zombie medals. Upon playing this, I found combat to be somewhat janky. It did improve gradually as I went along, but from beginning to end, there was still a discernible amount of jank. But I felt the feeling of jankiness was heightened by my playstyle, where I would slowly look around every environment with this frustrating camera, and I wasn't exactly attempting to end my encounters as fast as possible. After beating the game, a task that takes roughly 6 hours, I decided to start over and play a little more in the way I felt the developers intended, and kind of attempt a speedrun of sorts. With this playstyle, the game actually feels a lot better. The game is designed to appear rather careless, and it's heightened by playing in a manner that feels rather careless as well. It still isn't great, but it's certainly better. Honestly, with the combat being what it is, I probably would have ended up strongly disliking this game if it was straight combat from beginning to end. But the game keeps things interesting by always introducing new mini-games and challenges within the stages. By far, one of the most interesting things about this game in terms of its gameplay is just how varied it all is. As if they knew that the combat alone wasn't enough to carry the game, they constantly break away from it and introduce loads of new minigames, gameplay styles, and challenges. From stages where you're expected to rush from beginning to end, to minigames where you're trapped inside other video games, to this basketball game where you need to get zombie heads through the hoop, to this god-awful turret section minigame where you need to protect Nick as he runs the bases, there is always something new popping up, and most of it squeaks by at being just decent. Much like the combat, it's never exactly good, but it's at least interesting. Like B-movies in general, it holds your attention. Whether through genuine entertainment or ironic, it holds your attention, and my god, that counts for something. Lollipop Chainsaw knows its weaknesses, and it designs around them to make sure that the player never gets bored. It's also a hyper-stylistic game. Sure, graphically it looks a bit cheap and it's starting to show its age, but it's actually held up rather well. Better than many games from the era, I feel, thanks to its art style. The soundtrack is loaded with pop culture hits ranging from the Chordette's infamous Lollipop all the way to Dragon Force's Heroes of Our Time. Any game that knows when and where to use such a diverse soundtrack must be doing something right. Then again, that seems like a James Gunn decision to me. As stated earlier, the voiceover work is done by a very talented cast, and they know how to deliver on the campy absurdity.
Looks like you're out of coins, weird voice guy.
The sound design is budget, but that's probably by design. Lollipop Chainsaw at the end of the day is kind of an enigma. They spent a lot of money just between the voice actors, consultants, and soundtrack alone, but they spent all this cash on a game that was meant to feel like a stylized low-budget movie. Is this really just a expensive B-grade game? I don't even know, it's a weird one to approach. So much of this game just isn't what I would call traditionally good. Even the various forms of gameplay I'd say are below average, but the rate at which they mix it up and introduce new distractions keeps you entertained enough that I feel like it pulls the game up to at least being an almost average experience. Once you factor in everything else, the style, the ironic enjoyment, the comedy and absurdity, the good voice acting and the good soundtrack, I don't know, it just feels like there's something here. I can't really just openly recommend this to people, especially where its gameplay can be frustrating at times. The camera alone could strike an entire point or two off a numeric rating, but if you are one of those people that can enjoy things ironically, this was made for you. You take the good with the bad because that's what a B-movie is. Given this was designed in the fashion of a B-movie, I think they nailed what they were going for almost perfectly. But damn if this just isn't for everybody. The game was pretty much designed for people with my taste in cinema, but it doesn't quite have my style of gameplay, as I do tend to play games a little bit more like a virtual tourist and a little more methodically than this game really wanted me to. As a result, it did feel a little rough to start out, but as I adjusted and tried to play the game in the way that I feel like it was designed to be played, it did end up going a lot smoother. And over the course of this, I did end up developing a little bit more of a deeper appreciation for what this game is. It knows what it is, and it does its best to play around its weaknesses. A noble and entertaining experiment by Grasshopper and Suda51 that I think at least earns a footnote in the history of video games. But it's not a piece of gaming history that you need to rush out and try, especially if you don't already identify as part of the crowd of people that the game was made for. If you're not into B-movies and ironic entertainment, you're probably gonna feel this game is trash, and I don't blame you. It kind of is trash, and that kind of is the point, and it kind of is ironically enjoyable as a result. And that's all for today, folks. If you guys found this video useful or helpful at all, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you can. If you really want to support the content, consider supporting the show on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, where you get videos like this one early. Socials are in the description, and as always, folks, nicht aufs Net.